Every year, Americans spend over $15 billion on fish oil capsules. Little golden softgels, sealed in orange plastic bottles, lined up on pharmacy shelves with clinical-looking labels. And every year, a quiet body of research asks increasingly pointed questions about how well those isolated processed oils actually survive digestion, reach the tissues that need them, and function the way whole food fats do. Meanwhile, the Book of Numbers records the ancient Israelites in the wilderness mourning the foods they left behind in Egypt. Fish, yes, but also cucumbers, leeks, onions, and herbs. A whole community of plants, eaten together, morning and evening, season after season. They did not take one thing out of that picture and put it in a bottle. They ate the whole picture. Today we are going to meet 13 plants that carry omega-3 fatty acids, the way nature originally packaged them, inside whole seeds, leaves, roots, and oils that ancient peoples grew, harvested, and prepared with a care we are only now beginning to understand scientifically. Pay close attention to number 1. It is something most people have growing wild in their garden right now, actively pulling it out as a nuisance, without any idea they are discarding what researchers have called the most omega-3 dense leafy plant ever measured. And when we reach number 7, I want to tell you a story from the Hebrew scriptures about a man who collapsed in a desert, alone and starving, and the plant-based food that restored him well enough to walk 40 more days. That story is not just poetry. The physiology behind it is real. Number 13. Spinach. The Persians called it the prince of vegetables. When Arab traders carried it westward across the Caliphate in the 7th and 8th centuries, it spread through Spain and then across all of Europe with the speed of something urgently needed. The Capitular de Villis, the agricultural decree issued by Charlemagne around 812 AD, listed spinach among the plants he required to be grown on every royal estate. That is not the behavior of a culture treating spinach as garnish. That is a civilization that understood it as foundational. The Greeks knew it under similar reverence. Persian physicians writing in the tradition of Avicenna's 11th century canon of medicine described dark leafy greens, spinach prominent among them, as cooling, blood-building foods with specific applications for weakness and fatigue. In Chinese medicine, spinach appears in texts as early as the Tang dynasty as a food for the liver and the eyes. What these traditions were collectively registering, without any language for fatty acids, is partly confirmed now. Spinach contains approximately 50 milligrams of alpha-linolenic acid, the plant form of omega-3 per 100 grams of raw leaf. That number is modest on its own. But here is the preparation detail that most people miss entirely. When you wilt spinach in heat, cell membranes rupture and those delicate fats are exposed immediately to oxidation. Raw spinach consumed with a fat-containing food, a drizzle of olive oil, a handful of walnuts crumbled over the top, delivers its omega-3 content in better condition. Eat it lightly dressed with cold oil. Never boil it. The Persians, who called it the prince of vegetables, were eating it in ways that protected what was inside it. Spinach is not the star of this list, but it has been on nearly every royal table in the civilized world for 1,000 years. That is worth noticing. Number 12. Mustard greens. Most people know mustard as a yellow condiment in a plastic squeeze bottle. Almost nobody knows that the plant behind that condiment has been cultivated for longer than almost any other crop on Earth. Archaeological evidence from the Indus Valley civilization, dating back more than 5,000 years, shows deliberate cultivation of Brassica juncea, the mustard plant, in organized agricultural settlements. The same plant. The same leaves now sitting unnoticed in the produce aisle. The Talmud discusses the mustard plant with familiarity that suggests it was utterly commonplace in ancient Judea. Jesus of Nazareth chose the mustard seed specifically in his parable of the kingdom, not because it was exotic, but because his listeners grew it, harvested it, and saw it every single day of their lives. In ancient India, Ayurvedic texts, including the Charaka Samhita, classified mustard greens as a warming, stimulating food appropriate for cold seasons and depleted constitutions. In China's classical pharmacopoeia, mustard seed was used as a circulatory stimulant and digestive aid for centuries. Modern analysis of mustard greens reveals an alpha-linolenic acid content that exceeds most other common cooking greens, somewhere between 90 and 110 milligrams per 100 grams of raw leaf, placing it meaningfully above spinach and kale in omega-3 concentration. That peppery bite, the sharpness that makes some people cautious about mustard greens, comes from glucosinolates, sulfur-containing compounds that research associates with cellular protective activity. Cooking softens and mellows the flavor, but also diminishes the glucosinolates. Eat them both ways. Steam them lightly and preserve the sharpness when you can. If you slow cook them southern style, add your pot liquor back to the bowl. The water-soluble nutrients that cook out of the leaves settle into that liquid, and your ancestors drank it as medicine. The mustard plant fed 5,000 years of civilization. It deserves better than its reputation. Number 11. Kale. Before there was head cabbage, before the tight round globe that fills every supermarket in autumn, there was kale. Brassica oleracea in its most ancient, unimproved form. Open, ruffled, dark, and cold-hardy in ways that the domesticated cabbage we bred from it never quite matched. Roman writers Pliny the Elder and Columella both recorded kale as a standard garden plant of their era. Columella, writing his practical agricultural manual, De Re Rustica, in the 1st century AD, this was not a plant on the margins. This was the winter green of the Roman Empire. In medieval Scotland and Ireland, kale was so central to survival that the kitchen garden was simply called the kaleyard, the kale yard. The same was true in Scandinavia, where kale survived under snow and could be harvested through the frozen months when almost nothing else grew. There is a nutritional logic to this cultural dependence that modern chemistry now bears out. Kale's omega-3 content, roughly 100 milligrams of alpha-linolenic acid per 100 grams of raw leaf, is modest, but its simultaneous delivery of vitamin K, vitamin C, lutein, and zeaxanthin, fat-soluble nutrients like lutein and zeaxanthin, require dietary fat to be absorbed. The small amount of omega-3 in kale is part of the delivery system for the rest of the plant's nutritional payload. Here is the preparation detail worth knowing. After a hard frost, kale converts stored starches to sugars, a biochemical process called cold sweetening, and becomes noticeably milder and sweeter. This is not folklore. It is enzymatic. Grow it in your garden and harvest after the first frost, and you will taste the difference immediately. Those cold sweetened leaves, eaten raw in a winter salad with a fat-containing dressing, represent the plant in something close to its optimal nutritional state. 2,000 years of European winter gardens arrived at this instinctively. Number 10. Hemp seeds. For most of the 20th century in America, an extraordinarily useful crop was swept aside by association and legislation, and the people who lost access to it had no idea what they were losing. Hemp, Cannabis sativa, in its non-psychoactive form, was one of the most widely cultivated plants in human history. The Shennong Ben Caojing, the foundational Chinese pharmacopoeia compiled around the 1st century AD, but drawing on traditions far older, listed hemp seeds as a tonic food for weakness and aging. The ancient Egyptians used hemp medicinally. Roman physicians described it. For millennia across Asia, Europe, and the Americas, hemp was simply a useful plant that fed, clothed, and sheltered people. What modern nutritional analysis reveals is that hemp seeds, the hulled form now sold as hemp hearts, carry approximately 3 grams of alpha-linolenic acid per 3 tablespoons serving, along with 10 grams of complete protein containing all 9 essential amino acids and meaningful amounts of magnesium, phosphorus, and iron. But the detail that most separates hemp from other omega-3 seeds is the ratio. Hemp seeds carry omega-6 and omega-3 fats in a ratio of roughly 2 or 3 to 1, a proportion that many researchers consider close to the ancestral human dietary ratio before industrialized seed oil consumption pushed omega-6 intake dramatically higher. Most Western diets now run somewhere between 10 and 20 parts omega-6 for every 1 part omega-3. Hemp seeds, eaten regularly, push gently against that imbalance. No soaking is required. No grinding is necessary. Sprinkle them over yogurt, stir them into oatmeal, blend them into a smoothie, or press them lightly into the top of homemade bread before baking. They have a mild, nutty flavor that offends no one. They were a staple food of ancient civilizations across 3 continents. They are available again now, and most people have no idea what to do with them. Number 9. Walnuts. There is a Greek myth in which a princess named Caria was transformed into a walnut tree by the god Dionysus as an act of preservation and love. The Romans named the walnut juglans regia, the royal nut of Jupiter. In ancient Persia, walnut trees were planted at the centers of formal gardens as emblems of abundance and shade. This is a nut that human civilization has been paying attention to for a very long time. The Hebrew Bible mentions nuts in the Song of Solomon. The Garden of Nuts, referenced in chapter 6, is almost certainly a walnut grove, which were common in the Jordan Valley and the Galilee region in the ancient Near East. Medieval European monasteries maintained walnut orchards specifically for the oil pressed from the kernels, which was used in cooking, in lamp fuel, and in the preparation of medicines. The physicians of medieval Islamic medicine, including Ibn Sina, Avicenna, described walnuts. A single 1-ounce handful of walnuts delivers approximately 2.5 grams of alpha-linolenic acid, making it the only common tree nut that qualifies as a genuinely significant plant source of omega-3. But here is the preparation precision that most people never consider. Walnuts contain compounds called phytates that mildly inhibit mineral absorption. Soaking shelled walnuts in filtered water for 8 to 12 hours, then draining and rinsing them, reduces phytate content meaningfully and also softens the slight bitterness of the tannins in the skin. The skin itself, the papery brown layer, contains elegitannins and flavonoids that you lose if you blanch them. Keep the skin. Soak them. Eat them fresh. Store any remainder in the freezer, not on the counter, because walnut oils begin oxidizing within days at room temperature. The cultures that valued walnuts for centuries stored them in their shells, in cool cellars, consuming them through the winter. They did not buy them pre-shelled in transparent bags under fluorescent lights. The difference is not trivial. Buy them whole when you can. Number 8. Chia seeds. In the Nahuatl language of the Aztec Empire, the word chia means strength. It was not a casual name. Chia seeds, Salvia hispanica, were a military and agricultural crop of the highest strategic importance in Mesoamerican civilization. Aztec tribute records, the codices that document what conquered peoples were required to deliver to Tenochtitlan, list chia alongside maize, beans, and amaranth as the 4 essential crops. Runners carrying dispatches across the empire reportedly carried pouches of chia as their only provision on journeys of many days. Whether or not every detail of that tradition is historically verifiable, the nutritional basis for it is sound. A single ounce of chia seeds, approximately 2 tablespoons, delivers just over 5 grams of alpha-linolenic acid, along with 11 grams of fiber, 4 grams of protein, and roughly 18% of the daily recommended calcium intake. The fiber in chia is predominantly soluble fiber that absorbs water and forms a viscous gel. This gel slows digestion and glucose absorption in ways that studies have characterized as meaningful for blood sugar management, with results researchers consider worth continuing to investigate. The same gel effect that makes chia pudding possible in your kitchen is doing something biologically specific in your digestive tract. Here is the preparation detail that goes beyond what most recipes tell you. Chia seeds can be consumed whole. Unlike flax, the outer coat is soft enough to allow digestive enzymes access to the interior. But cold soaking them overnight in water or oat milk before consuming them in the morning does 2 things. It activates the gel layer fully, improving digestive comfort. And it begins a mild fermentation process that traditional Mesoamerican preparations likely replicated through their chia-based drinks called iskie, water, chia, lime juice, and a touch of sweetener, which was consumed before athletic events. The lime juice is not accidental. Mild acid softens the seed coat further and provides vitamin C, which may support the metabolic pathways that use alpha-linolenic acid downstream. Ancient nutritional intuition. Modern biochemical logic. Number 7. Flaxseed. Let me tell you about a man sitting under a juniper tree in the wilderness of the Negev, wishing he were dead. His name was Elijah. He was one of the great prophets of Israel, a man who had just called down fire from the sky in front of an entire nation, who had outrun the chariot of a king for miles on foot, who had done things that made him legendary. And now he was alone in the desert, physically and spiritually broken, asking God to end his life. He lay down under the tree and fell into an exhausted sleep. The first book of Kings, chapter 19, records what happened next with unusual specificity. An angel touched him and told him to arise and eat. And when Elijah looked, beside his head was a cake baked on hot stones and a jar of water. He ate, drank, and lay down again. The angel came a second time, touched him, and said, "Arise and eat, because the journey is too great for you." He rose, ate, drank, and on the strength of that food walked 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the mountain of God. Biblical scholars and food historians have long debated what that ash cake was made of. The Hebrew term suggests something dense and round, cooked over coals. In the wilderness region where this account is set, the most available grains that could be ground and baked without infrastructure, flaxseed flatbreads, dense, oil-rich, shelf-stable, were known throughout the ancient Near East. They provided calories, fat, and slow-burning energy in a form a man could carry in his hand and eat in one sitting. That is not just poetry. That is a description of what we would now call sustained energy metabolism. Flaxseed is the single most omega-3 rich plant food known to science. 1 tablespoon of freshly ground flax contains approximately 2.3 grams of alpha-linolenic acid, more than most people consume in an entire day from all sources combined. It also contains lignans, a class of phytoestrogen compounds, in concentrations 27 times higher than the next richest dietary source. Clinical investigation of flaxseed lignans is ongoing, with researchers noting results consistent enough with cardiovascular and hormonal health endpoints. But here is what none of the wellness blogs tell you, because most of them are not paying close enough attention. The hull of the flaxseed is so tough, so deliberately protective of the oil inside, that whole seeds can pass through the human digestive tract entirely intact. A study comparing whole flax to ground flax found that whole seeds provided essentially no measurable increase in circulating omega-3 levels. Ground seeds produced a clear and significant increase. The grinding must happen fresh. Ground flax exposed to air, light, and warmth begins oxidizing within hours. Buy whole seeds. Grind them in a small coffee grinder each morning. Consume them immediately, stirred into oatmeal, blended into yogurt, or mixed with warm water and a little honey. Store unground seeds in a sealed glass jar in a cool, dark cabinet. They keep for a year this way. Elijah rose on the strength of what the wilderness provided. The chemistry of that provision is still there, unchanged, available in a tablespoon of freshly ground seed. The journey ahead of you is not 40 days in the desert. But your body runs on the same biology his did. If this kind of ancient knowledge resonates with you, if you find yourself stopping to think about the connection between what our ancestors understood and what science is now confirming, hit that like button and subscribe. Because what is coming in the next 6 plants goes even deeper into the parts of this story that most people have never heard. Number 6. Purslane. I promised you this one at the very beginning, and it may be the most genuinely surprising plant on this entire list. Purslane, Portulaca oleracea, grows between your tomatoes. It grows in sidewalk cracks. It sprawls flat along the edges of garden beds, fleshy and reddish-stemmed, with small paddle-shaped succulent leaves. Most American gardeners spend significant energy ripping it out. Ancient Mediterranean peoples spent significant energy making sure they had enough of it. Purslane is mentioned in the writings of Dioscorides, the Greek physician whose first-century work De Materia Medica remained the foundational reference for European and Islamic pharmacy for 1500 years. He described it as cooling and moistening, the ancient humoral language for what we might now call anti-inflammatory and hydrating. The Ebers Papyrus, the Egyptian medical text dating to approximately 1550 BC, itself copying traditions centuries older, includes preparations involving purslane for conditions of the digestive system. Pliny the Elder recommended it. Avicenna listed it. It was eaten across the Mediterranean, the Middle East, the Indian subcontinent, and Mexico for thousands of years of continuous human history. Here is what that history was responding to, without any modern laboratory to explain it. Purslane contains between 300 and 400 milligrams of alpha-linolenic acid per 100 grams of fresh leaf, approximately. It is, by measured analysis, the most omega-3 rich leafy vegetable ever studied. And then there is the anomaly that makes botanists pause. Purslane is one of the only land plants on Earth known to contain trace amounts of EPA and DHA, the long-chain marine omega-3s that are otherwise found almost exclusively in fish, shellfish, and algae. The concentrations are small. They are not comparable to what you would find in fish, but their presence in a land plant at all is genuinely unusual, and researchers have been trying to understand why since the late 1980s. Purslane also contains melatonin in concentrations that plant scientists have found notable, higher than in many foods commonly discussed for sleep support. It contains glutathione, one of the body's primary endogenous antioxidants. It contains betalain pigments, the same class of compounds that give beets their color, with associated antioxidant activity researchers consider worth continued investigation. Eat it raw. Toss the fresh leaves into a salad with olive oil, lemon juice, and tomatoes, a preparation essentially identical to the one described in ancient Mediterranean texts. Do not cook it if you can avoid it. The omega-3 content of a wilted, heat-exposed purslane is meaningfully diminished. Identify it carefully before consuming any wild plant. The distinguishing features of purslane, the thick, succulent, reddish stems, the small, smooth paddle leaves, the tendency to grow flat and low, are distinct enough that most gardeners identify it correctly once they know what they are looking at. You have been pulling this plant out of your garden for years. It was asking to be eaten. Number 5. Sacha inchi. Deep in the Peruvian Amazon, in the department of San Martin, archaeologists excavating sites associated with the ancient Chachapoya culture. The plant, a climbing vine in the Euphorbiaceae family, produces striking star-shaped seed pods containing large lentil-sized seeds that indigenous peoples roasted and ground into oil and paste. The name in Quechua means mountain peanut, though it is not related to the peanut family. Spanish colonial-era records from the 16th and 17th centuries document Sacha inchi as a standard food crop in Amazonian communities, though Spanish colonizers showed little interest in it, and it remained essentially unknown outside the western Amazon for centuries. It did not enter serious nutritional science until the 1980s, when Peruvian researchers conducting an analysis of Amazonian food plants found its fatty acid profile so unusual. Sacha inchi seed oil contains approximately 48 to 54% alpha-linolenic acid, a proportion comparable to flaxseed oil and dramatically higher than any other nut or legume studied. A single serving of roasted Sacha inchi seeds delivers nearly 3 times the omega-3 content of an equivalent weight of walnuts. It also delivers vitamin E in the form of tocopherols and tocotrienols, compounds that function as antioxidants specifically protecting polyunsaturated fatty acids from oxidative damage, which means the plant carries its own protective mechanism for the oils inside it. This is a nutritional design that whole food sources often demonstrate and that extracted oils cannot fully replicate. The flavor of roasted Sacha inchi is rich, nutty, and slightly reminiscent of sunflower seeds. They are now available through specialty health food retailers and online. If you find them, eat them as you would almonds, a small handful as a snack, or pressed into homemade granola bars or trail mix. Do not heat the oil above moderate temperatures. Like all high omega-3 oils, it is vulnerable to oxidation under high heat. 3,000 years of Amazonian cultivation. 30 years of serious nutritional science. The world is still catching up. Number 4. Perilla. Here is a plant that an entire continent has been eating for 1,000 years, while the rest of the world remained almost entirely unaware of it. Perilla frutescens, called shiso in Japanese, kiken in Korean, and tia to in Vietnamese, is a member of the mint family with broad, serrated leaves in either green or deep burgundy purple. Classical Chinese medical texts, dating from the Han Dynasty, including references in the Benkao Gangmu, the Compendium of Materia Medica, compiled by Li Shizhen in the 16th century, describe perilla as an herb that moves qi, warms the middle, and dispels cold and damp. The language is classical Chinese medical theory. The applications it was describing, digestive support, respiratory comfort, warmth for those who run cold, are consistent with the plant's bioactive compounds as understood today. In Korea, perilla leaves are eaten raw, wrapped around grilled meats, marinated in soy and sesame, and served as a fundamental part of the meal, rather than a garnish. In Japan, shiso accompanies sashimi not merely as decoration, but as an active antimicrobial. The volatile compounds in the leaf are documented to inhibit certain pathogenic bacteria, a practice Korean and Japanese food culture arrived at empirically and maintained for centuries before microbiology exists. TED to explain it. Here is what makes perilla exceptional in the context of this list. Perilla seed oil contains between 54 and 64% alpha-linolenic acid, the highest proportion of any plant oil documented in scientific literature. That is not a modest difference from competitors. That is a structural dominance. And perilla also contains a compound called rosmarinic acid, also found in rosemary, basil, and other mint family herbs, that laboratory studies have associated with anti-inflammatory and antihistamine activity, with results researchers describe as preliminary. The leaves are available in Korean and Japanese grocery markets in most mid-sized American cities. Seeds are available for easy home cultivation. The plant grows readily in American soil, behaves like a warm weather annual. Eat the fresh leaves raw with any meal. If you find perilla seed oil, use it cold as a finishing oil over rice, vegetables, or dressings, never in high heat cooking. The ALA content that makes it extraordinary is precisely what makes it vulnerable to heat degradation. The highest omega-3 concentration in the plant kingdom, used as an everyday food by hundreds of millions of people for 1,000 years. Most Americans have never heard the name. Number 3. Camelina. Before canola, before sunflower oil, before the entire modern industrialized seed oil complex, Northern European farmers pressed their cooking oil from a plant that thrived in the thin, cold soils of the northern latitudes and asked almost nothing of the people who grew it. Camelina sativa, called gold of pleasure in Old English, false flax in some traditions, and Leindaughter in German, has been recovered from archaeological sites across northern Europe dating back more than 3,000 years. Swiss lake dwellings from the Bronze Age contained camelina seeds. Iron Age sites in Denmark and Germany show evidence of its cultivation. Charlemagne's agricultural decree, the same Capitulaire de Villiers that listed spinach, specifically required camelina to be grown on royal estates. Medieval German agricultural manuals described it as a reliable oil crop for cool climates. It fed and lit the homes of northern Europe for millennia. Then industrial agriculture arrived with its preference for crops that yield to standardization, and camelina nearly vanished within 2 generations. It did not vanish completely. Researchers working on sustainable aviation fuel in the 21st century rediscovered it as an exceptionally efficient feedstock, a plant that produces meaningful oil yields in marginal soil with minimal inputs. That agricultural rediscovery brought nutritional researchers back to its analysis. Camelina oil contains 35 to 45% alpha-linolenic acid, a range comparable to flaxseed oil. But here is what distinguishes it from flax oil in practical terms. Camelina oil is significantly more oxidatively stable. It contains naturally high levels of vitamin E, specifically gamma-tocopherol and delta-tocopherol, that function as antioxidant stabilizers, protecting the omega-3 fatty acids from the rancidity that makes flax oil so short-lived once opened. In practical terms, this means camelina oil can be used in light cooking at temperatures up to approximately 350 degrees Fahrenheit. This is a meaningful distinction in a kitchen. Its flavor is mild, slightly nutty, with a faint mustard note, unsurprising given that it belongs to the brassica family. Use it as a finishing oil, in cold dressings, or in low-heat cooking. It is now available from small specialty producers and online. The people of Bronze Age Europe pressed it from hand-gathered seeds in clay pots over open fires. The chemistry they were working with has not changed. Number 2. Algae. Here is the question that reframes the entire conversation about omega-3. Why do fish contain omega-3? Because they eat algae, or they eat smaller animals that ate algae, or they eat smaller animals that ate animals that ate algae. The fish is an intermediary. The algae is the source. Every long-chain omega-3 molecule, every EPA and DHA molecule in every salmon fillet and every fish oil capsule ever produced originated in a photosynthesizing microorganism at the base of the aquatic food chain. We have been crediting the middleman for millennia. Coastal peoples understood the primary source more intuitively than inland cultures. The Japanese have consumed seaweed as a daily dietary staple for at least 2,000 years. Records from the Nara period in the 8th century document seaweed as both food and official tax payment. The Welsh consumed a red seaweed preparation called laverbread, Porphyra umbilicalis, the same species as Japanese nori, as a breakfast food for centuries, particularly in coastal communities in Pembrokeshire and Glamorgan, pressing it into small cakes and frying it in oatmeal. Coastal Irish communities in counties Clare and Galway have a documented tradition of eating carrageen moss. The Aztecs harvested spirulina from the surface of Lake Texcoco and dried it into cakes called tequitlau, a practice documented by the Spanish friar Bernardino de Sahagún in the 16th century. The Kanembu people living around Lake Chad in Central Africa harvested Spirulina platensis from the lake surface for centuries and still do, drying it in the sun and crumbling it into stews as a protein and mineral supplement. Multiple civilizations on multiple continents, independently and without communication, arriving at the same conclusion about the same category of organisms. That convergence is worth sitting with. Modern algae-derived omega-3 supplements, produced from specific microalgae strains, typically Schizochytrium or Nanochloropsis, are the only fully plant-based source of preformed DHA and EPA. They bypass the conversion bottleneck that makes ALA to DHA conversion in the human body slow and incomplete. Research on DHA in particular, for cognitive aging, for visual function, and for inflammatory regulation, suggests results that researchers consider sufficiently promising to sustain continued interest. Edible seaweeds, nori, wakame, kombu, dulse, kelp, provide a range of minerals, including iodine, magnesium, and calcium alongside smaller amounts of omega-3. They are best consumed as food rather than supplement. A sheet of nori with rice, a small handful of dried dulse in soup, a piece of kombu added to the cooking water for beans. Their mineral density is significant and whole food consumption distributes that density across a meal. The ocean has been producing omega-3 since before complex life existed. The fish got there later. Number 1. Flaxseed in its whole food context. We began this list with the individual story of flaxseed. We end it with the larger truth that flaxseed teaches, and that every plant on this list demonstrates if you look carefully enough. Flaxseed oil, bottled, extracted, cold-pressed, nitrogen-flushed, concentrates the alpha-linolenic acid content of the seed. In that sense, it delivers more omega-3 per gram than whole ground flax. But the lignin content of whole ground flaxseed is roughly 800 times higher than that of flaxseed oil. The fiber, both soluble and insoluble, is entirely absent in the extracted oil. The protein is gone. The minerals are gone. The phytoestrogen precursors that the gut microbiome converts into active enterolignins are gone. What remains in the oil is a fraction, the most marketable fraction, of what the whole seed contained. This is not a claim against all supplementation. It is an observation about what extraction does to a food. The same principle applies across this entire list. Chia gel, made from whole seeds, retains a fiber matrix that slows digestion in ways that chia oil cannot. Ground perilla leaves eaten in a Korean meal deliver rosmarinic acid, volatile compounds, chlorophyll, and minerals alongside the omega-3 oil, a matrix that a bottle of perilla oil does not contain. Purslane eaten fresh from the garden provides melatonin, glutathione, betalains, and water content alongside its unusual fatty acid profile. Sacha inchi seeds carry their own vitamin E antioxidant protection for the oils within them, a protection that begins to dissolve the moment the seed is cracked and pressed. Ancient peoples did not isolate the active ingredient. They could not, and they did not need to. They ate the whole plant, prepared with the precision that centuries of observation had taught them, in combinations and contexts that enhanced what each plant could do. Modern nutritional science is gradually articulating why those combinations worked. The evidence is still developing, but the direction it points is consistent. Here is the question worth carrying after this video ends. We have spent decades asking which nutrient is responsible for the health benefits observed in traditional plant-based diets. What if that is the wrong question? What if the answer has always been in the matrix, in the unreplicable complexity of the whole food, the way compounds interact with each other, and with the human digestive system in ways that cannot be extracted? If this kind of thinking resonates with you, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Someone taking a supplement they are not sure about. Someone who has been told that plants cannot provide what fish can. Someone who has been yanking purslane out of their garden without knowing what they were discarding. Hit like if this conversation changed anything in the way you think about omega-3. And subscribe, because we are going to keep following this thread into ancient medical texts, into forgotten crops, into the parts of nutritional science. Tell me in the comments, which plant on this list surprised you most? And what should we explore next? This video is for educational and informational purposes only, and is not intended as medical advice. If you have a health condition or take medications, please consult a qualified healthcare provider before making changes to your diet.